Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes to give people a chance to join and then we'll get started. Hi everyone, thank you all for joining today. We're just going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then we will get started. Great, I think we can get started. So this is the Green Match Fund webinar with the Friends of the Earth. I'm Sahar, the Key Partnerships Manager, and we have Bethany, who's our Marketing Comms Manager, and I'll let Friends of the Earth introduce themselves when we get onto the slides. But I'll hand over to Bethany to go over the housekeeping for the webinar.
Thanks, Sahil, and really great to have you all here. So as Sahil mentioned, just a few notes before we get started. Well, I'm sure you're all very well aware of this already. But you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom panel a chat box. Please do click on that. You can use this to introduce yourselves, share any ideas and thoughts throughout the session, and also let us know if you're experiencing any issues for any reason. You'll also see Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Please do click on that to ask us any questions. Very happy to answer all of those questions at the end of the session, but just to make sure that we don't miss any. If for any reason you need to enable captions for this webinar, that's absolutely fine. You'll see a caption button at the bottom of your Zoom panel as well, so you can enable those. And as always, we will be recording this session, so you'll be able to watch it again on YouTube afterwards or share it with any colleagues. And finally, if we do not manage to get to all of the questions at the end of the session, please do send us an email and we'll be very happy to answer those. But with that, I will pass straight on to the Friends of the Earth team.
Thanks, Beth. Let me just share the slides. 1 second.
Just waiting for them to pop up. While they do, I'll just, oh, there we go, perfect. Thank you both, and thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to the Big Give for asking us to come and talk to you about how we run our Big Give Green campaign. I'm Alex, I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm the Senior Philanthropy Officer at Friends of the Earth, and I've been doing Big Give campaigns, either running them or being involved in them since about 2017, and this will be the second one that I have managed for Friends of the Earth.
And hi everyone, I'm Barney. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the individual giving officer at Friends of the Earth. I've been here since 2021, and I've run 7 Big Give campaigns here. Yeah, we're here to talk about the Big Give Green and how we run our successful campaigns. So if we'll go through just the agenda for this session. So I'm going to talk us through this now for us. We'll give you a little bit of a quick introduction to ourselves and to Friends of the Earth and our relationship with the Big Give. And then we're going to go run through a few things we do before the campaign launch week in prep, and then what we do actively during the week. And then follow on by going what we do at the end of the week, kind of almost immediately as things wrap up. We then want to do a little bit of time talking about what doesn't quite work for us, what we found kind of testing things over the last few years. And then we'd like to end on a bit more of a positive note and talk about what does work for us in particular. And then we'll have a bit of time for a Q&A to go over some questions. If you do have those, do pop them in the chat and we'll come to them at the end. But to start off, I'm going to kick over to Alex to start talking about our introduction.
Thanks, Barney. So yeah, before we get into the meaty bit, we just wanted to kind of give an overview of who we are. So we are Friends of the Earth, England, Wales and Northern Ireland. We're a leading environmental organisation working to create a sustainable future. We fight for climate justice through grassroots campaigns and legal action. We're part of an international community of more than 2 million people across 75 countries dedicated to the protection of the natural world and the well-being of everyone in it. So we are England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but from now on I'm just going to talk to us about Friends of the Earth because it's quite a mouthful to keep saying that. So at Friends of the Earth here, our fundraising is split between major giving, so that's those who give £2,500 plus, and we've got around 500 donors in that pool across individuals, corporates and trusts. Then we have our mid-value donors who give between 500 and 2,499, and we have around 800 individuals in that pool. And then we have individual giving, where there are tens of thousands of donors who give under £500. And we all collaborate to take part in our Big Give campaigns.
And so we've grown our Big Give Green campaigns over the years from about £55,000 in 2021 to £240,000 in 2024. We've kind of really invested quite a lot in expanding what we do with the Big Give Green each time. And we've been doing the Big Give Christmas Challenge since 2009. So we've been doing this as a charity for quite a long time. There's quite a lot of knowledge kind of that's been passed down from project manager to project manager. And growing our Big Give Green in particular, I mean, it's taken time and persistence and the creation of a routine campaign, which we're going to start talking through now. So I'll pass you over to Alex to talk you through what we do before the campaign launches.
Great. So yeah, before the campaign launches, I'm not going to talk about the application or getting your pledges, as you're obviously all past that stage. However, there are plenty of other things we do to prepare for the launch of our campaign. So before we actually even submit our application, we get together the three kind of areas and discuss realistically how much each team thinks they'll raise. Obviously, it's all estimates at this stage, but it helps for each area to have their own target. And then major giving, which is where my focus is, then go one step further and put together a spreadsheet. You'll hear lots about spreadsheets in a minute, with individual prospect names and how much we're going to ask them for. This helps put us at ease that we'll reach our target, and also helps with comms planning and anything we can do in advance to help plan for the week, which is just so important. So then moving on to assets, we have a brilliant content and creative team who help us with the assets for the campaign. So I put a brief in with the team well ahead of time. For the upcoming campaign, I actually did it in February, and we already have all the assets designed and ready to go. We brief them on what we're looking for and talk through the look and feel of the campaign. And a useful tip is to have someone who is working on campaign delivery there to make sure all the assets align with the look and feel of the campaign as a whole. And that really helps with the donor journey and seeing the continuity between like the feel of the campaign from the Big Give all the way through to kind of completion. So the assets that we ask for, obviously we have the banner or picture for the Big Give campaign page. And another tip here is to be careful about getting the correct dimensions for that picture, because otherwise the text can be cropped when you're looking at it on a phone or a tablet. So just, yeah, make sure to test it and that you've got kind of everything right in the frame. Then we use pictures for various emails, mostly that we send to our major and mid-value donors. We always put a banner on our Friends of the Earth homepage that directs people to the campaign page. And then we have e-signatures that we use across the organisations. We try and make everybody, not just fundraisers, but across the teams, use an e-signature a couple of days before and then definitely during the week. So then when we're planning our comms, so comms look very different between individual giving and major giving. So it's really good to put together a plan beforehand of when you're going to communicate with each group. We draft emails like our assets well ahead of time to make sure they're signed off and ready to go. It probably sounds like common sense, but prepping in advance will save panic during the week. And if you haven't done a Big Give before, it really is a whirlwind. It's like on you before you know it and then gone before you know it. And you're busy in the week trying to find out how many donations you've got, who's donated, sending thank yous. So having like all of the reminder emails or the launch day email ready in a folder just to click send is just a lifesaver when you're kind of getting stressed about it in the week. And then with the content of the email, we very much try to focus on the impact of the project we're fundraising for and also telling a story around that impact. I think it's kind of common knowledge in the fundraising world that storytelling is like the biggest tool in our kind of toolkit. So yeah, we really try to make a focus on that. It's also useful to use the Big Give application as your basis. So the messaging, again, stays consistent for the donor when they're reading your email and then they go to the campaign page and it all kind of obviously aligns. We make sure that the link to our Big Give Green campaign page is within the first paragraph of our email, along with the fundraising ask. That way, if people only read the first couple of sentences, which they are prone to do, like the first paragraph and the last two sentences of the email, they get a gist of what we're asking for. And then finally, before the campaign, we prep our major and mid-value donors ahead of time. So we're often asking them to give thousands, and telling them about the campaign on the morning it starts just doesn't give them enough time to process. And also asking them to pledge ahead of time helps us with our financial planning to see where any gaps in income might be, especially if we've got donors who we're kind of trying for the first time, maybe asking them, and then if they say yes or no, then we know who else we might need to go to. So we actually send emails anywhere between 1 month before, which I think is next week, and to a week before, depending on the donor and how much we're asking them for. And another good tip is this is also really useful if donors want to pay by bank transfer, as they'll need to set that up on the system ahead of time, and it can take a while sometimes to get verified. All the information for bank transfers is on the Big Give website, but yeah, do send them over to your donors who you think might want to give that way ahead of time. And then on the day, it's just for these major donors and mid-value donors, it's just a short email that links straight to the donation page. We don't kind of bypass the campaign page at that point, because the donors have already had all the information they need leading up to it. And so this is just like a quick, we've launched, here's the donation page, they click on it, they make their donation, and then they get on with their day. So we just make it as easy as possible for them. But with individual giving, there is much more of a focus on during the week marketing. And so I'll hand over to Barney.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, it hits midday and we're off in theory, but what that looks like in reality is that this is kind of a slow, gentle kickoff. I think for us, although we'd love to see that bar reach 100% immediately, especially as we've kind of hit bigger and bigger targets, the Big Give, I mean, it becomes more of a marathon than a sprint. And I think while seeing the amount of money we raise each year going up is really good, for me, it's more exciting that each campaign brings in new donors and new supporters, or brings over some of our existing supporters to the Big Give campaigns. Because I think it's such an amazing opportunity, and what we tend to see is a lot of repeat givers for each Big Give campaign. So that's always kind of a big goal for me. But the more people that are involved, the more planning we have to do. And so in terms of individual giving, we send out emails to almost all of our individual giving audience, which is tens of thousands of supporters. And these emails are planned way ahead of time, a lot like the major giving emails. But we only prepare emails for launch, and then 2 reminders which we keep in the wings. So we don't have we don't tend to prep our audience for the Big Give. And the reason we don't prep them is just that historically we haven't, and because it's something we've not had to do, but because we are always kind of looking at increasing how much we can raise in the Big Give, it's definitely something that we're now looking into, and it's something we are maybe looking to test actually for this Big Give Green for the first time, and see what difference it makes for certain segments of our audience. And so the launch email we send out from midday. But like with most email campaigns, we tend to do a test to a small selection of our audience first. We'll normally trial 3 different subject headings, and then after a few hours see which emails performed the best, and then we send out that winning variant to the majority of our audience. And so that tends to then go out from around 3 p.m. on launch day. And unlike the major giving audience, we tend to send individual giving donors to the campaign page, just because this is the first time they might be hearing about this work and what we're doing. So that's a difference there in the individual giving strategy. And in terms of social activity, we go live with that on that first day too, shortly after midday. Although our social strategy has changed a great deal over the last few years, I'll go into detail a bit more about organic social later on, but for launch, what we tend to have ready is some allocated spend for paid social, which we tend to run for most of the length of the Big Give campaign. And we also kind of prepare social media assets for staff to use, because we like to encourage kind of interaction internally as well. And we find that's a good way to kind of spread the word about what Big Give does and kind of get buy-in across our charity. And so now my favorite thing to talk about, you'll see there's an exclamation mark here, spreadsheets, because I love a good spreadsheet, and the Big Give is a great opportunity to really hone in your love for spreadsheets. And I think, so what's really important for us in the campaign week is knowing who has donated, specifically whether they're part of the major giving audience or not. And so Alex kind of has alluded to it. It's important for us to know which major donors are giving, as this affects our path to reaching our total significantly. And so although we've done the prep work and we have recorded what we're expecting people to donate, what we need to know is, have they given? When have they given? Do we need to send reminders out to them? And so we have a spreadsheet that's prepped in advance of going live that contains an export of our major giving donor data from our database. And so what we can then do is we paste in Big Give donation exports into this spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet, using a mix of formulas, will then see if anyone in this Big Give data is part of our set of major donors. And to go into a bit of the detail there, we do 3 matches. We do a match on the email address if it's been given. We do one on the donor's postcode if it's been given. And then lastly, we match on the first and last name. And this being relatively automated, it means that normally we spot major donors in the Big Give exports around 90% of the time, I want to say. There's some that we normally do just have to manually check. But essentially, we're refreshing this data in our own spreadsheets whenever we see a big jump in the total on the Big Give campaign page. And because we're always quite excited in the week, all of us in fundraising following it, we kind of always know when a big jump has happened. And we do also filter on these exports and see, normally for our purposes, we look and see if anyone's given over £100, and we then manually check to see if they haven't matched automatically, if we check and see if they if they're one of our major donors. But yeah, and then we'll communicate with this donor. So I'll let the account manager of that donor know. Alex will then update her planning spreadsheet so we can kind of account for the money that's come in. And then, the major donors are thanked immediately. And so whilst everyone gets an automatic thank you from the Big Give through the site, we do send a follow-up thanks to all donors who give. But the major donors, we do as close to them giving the donation as possible. Whereas everyone who we've got permission to contact through the Big Give or from the Big Give, or we reach out to afterwards. And so this this also helps us to know which donors to send follow-up reminders through to as well. The way we see it, if beforehand in those emails that Alex sends out, if a donor said that they would like to donate, then we want to help them. We're huge believers in the Big Give being this amazing opportunity, until we kind of frame it like that. Like we don't want our major donors to miss out on this. So we reach out to them. As you can probably tell, I'm very happy to talk spreadsheets with people. So if anyone wants to talk through at any time what could work for them, or to do something similar, do feel free to email me specifically to talk data or spreadsheets, or get in touch on LinkedIn or anything after this. But we're now going to move on to our next slide, which is what we do at the end of the week. So over to Alex.
Thanks, Barney. Don't come to me with any questions about spreadsheets. Barney is your person. So at the end of the week, hopefully we're at our total or very nearly at our total. But sometimes there can be a panic towards the end of the campaign if it doesn't look like you're going to reach your target. Our tip for that, and we've kind of only started doing this in the last couple of years, but it's such a stress reliever, is to have a major donor or someone waiting in the wings to swoop in and save the day. So, for example, last year, we had a donor actually pledge £20,000 to finish off the campaign. Actually, we only needed him to give £1,500 few, because if he'd had to give 20,000, we'd have been a bit worried. But knowing he was there if things really fell apart helped put us at ease. And also the major donor loved it, as he could really feel the impact of his donation. He felt like really on the inside track with us, and he felt so valuable, and that his donation was really, really valuable to us. So then you completed the campaign. Hurrah, breathe a good sigh of relief. What comes next? Well, after the campaign, we really concentrate on donor loyalty. Once a donor takes part in the match funding campaign, honestly, they get the bug and they want to come back for more. So we make sure that our donors feel warm and fuzzy after the campaign. We celebrate our joint success, because it's as much their success as it is ours, and the impact of it. And with our mid-value and major donors, we make sure we know who gave and how much they gave, so that we can put them on that spreadsheet for next time, making next year's campaign or next time's campaign much easier for us. Creating that routine for giving really helps with donor loyalty and retention. And we really have seen that over the years. The donors keep coming back. We also make sure to keep donors updated on the impact of their support throughout the year and how the campaign's going, any updates that we've got. We make sure that the Big Give Green donors hear all of that information, so our communication with them about the project doesn't stop once the Big Give Challenge ends. And then finally, we make sure to celebrate our success internally. We all know that it can sometimes be difficult to get staff enthusiastic about fundraising. So we use Slack internally, if you've heard of it, and we make sure to write a celebratory post almost as soon as their campaign is over. It's a cross-organisational effort, so we're sure to thank everyone who is involved. And honestly, it's really great to see people getting excited about the total raised, and we always get some really lovely comments, which gives us a boost as well. And showing the importance of the campaign, especially to our income line, really helps to keep staff engaged, meaning they're more likely to help us next time round and make our job much easier. So that's the campaign in a nutshell, how we run it. And Barney is now going to talk through some things that don't work for us when we're doing the campaign.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure we did this just because I think it's easy for any campaigns that you run to kind of get caught up in what does work. And I think it's useful to highlight just for us things that don't work and just be quite honest about them. And these are things we're always kind of working on and trying to do better with. But I think, you know, a strategy that might work for us might not work for you and vice versa. And so I kind of wanted to highlight things that I think we sometimes take for granted. The first one is organic social. I said we go live with paid social and organic social assets that the staff use. But in truth, we've really dialed down our organic strategy over the years. What we were finding was just that our Facebook and Twitter or X audiences, they weren't used to this kind of fundraising ask. Our kind of audiences there, they're kind of engaged with us on a more a service delivery level and kind of our activism. And so the posts we put out there just always performed really poorly. And I think, you know, occasionally we'd see some of our Big Give posts get a few likes, but it genuinely sometimes was just our staff liking them. And it just wasn't the traction that we were getting from our paid social fundraising campaigns. And so whilst we can't get metrics back through the Big Give on our paid social campaigns yet, we do still do that spend on paid social just because we do feel like it works for us. Interestingly, what we found was that there were a subset of people who really missed the organic social posts, and it was exclusively our own staff. The first time we launched a campaign without any organic social, I got a number of messages from staff asking if I knew that we hadn't tweeted anything out yet, like it was this mistake someone had made, which I think was quite understandable. So what we decided to do after that was ensure we had organic social materials that staff could use to post their own encouragement to join in on the campaign. And this kind of, I think, goes a long way to building that sense of celebrating internally too, kind of getting buy-in and getting people to take ownership of the Big Give success in their own way, because it is a real cross-collaboration across the whole organization. And then eventually we did put a post up on LinkedIn as like an organic post for people to interact with, and we actually found that that served our purposes quite well. And the engagement there was positive. And so that's been something we've kept going. So organic social wasn't working quite for us. We've just kind of changed up how we approached it for now. And it's something we're going to keep testing as we go forward. The next one for us is a really scary one, but it's that first email. There have been a few times where we've just found that first email just does not land. The first individual giving email. So going out to a lot of our audience, we kind of need to make sure that that performs well. And, you know, we test subject lines, we prep these things far in advance. And then after we send that first email, you know, maybe we're just seeing a small trickle of donations come in. And I think as people who are running these campaigns, it's almost our job to pretend not to be nervous with it and try and keep morale up. But our biggest lesson there is just not to panic. And I think not to panic the other staff on our teams. I think for all our audiences, you know, we have these 2 follow-up reminder emails prepared ahead of time, which we use depending on how close to our totals we're looking. and we just have to back ourselves and believe in the campaign. You know, there's a week to get this money in. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and we're now live. There isn't kind of room to start doubting what we've been doing. In a lot of cases, we've been awarded funds by a champion who believes in what we're doing too. And there are so many reasons why that first email can underperform. You know, the timing could have been off. Something could have come up in the news that day. You know, maybe other asks have just ended up in someone's inbox ahead of ours. I think what we've learned to do is just accept that that first email may not hit in a way we'd wish it did. But, you know, we've just got to keep going. And whenever we've had a first email that underperforms, we've almost all, like I say, we've always had a reminder that then overperforms. And I think having 2 reminders has been the sweet spot for us to say if a campaign launches on a Tuesday at midday, having a reminder we can do on the Thursday or Friday, and then depending on how things are looking, Monday or the Tuesday morning. And yeah, we've always kind of been able to hit our goals there. And then lastly, the thing that doesn't work for us potentially is maybe a controversial one, but it's this relying on major donors. And I think it's just something we've learned to be wary of. So I think, as Alex has said before, we have a major donor sitting in the wings who's normally committed to a certain amount of toppers up before the end of the campaign. And really, we arrived at that strategy after a few big give campaigns where we'd really struggled to hit our targets, largely because of relying on major donors. Because, you know, if we go out to our individual giving audience and, you know, a handful of individual giving supporters don't donate, we can probably make up for that. But a major donor, it takes 1 or 2 to, you know, have things that come up in the week. And they can be things like, you know, holidays, we've had illnesses. And, you know, when that happens, it's a really, really rough situation to be in. And it's just something we can't predict because these things just happen. And so, yeah, I think relying on major donors, you have to be careful. I think, you know, you can fill that spreadsheet with likelihood to donate and you could have it on 95%. And I'd always just caution things can happen. You kind of need to be prepared for, okay, well, if that doesn't come through, what's our backup plan? And actually then having that top-up donor has been a really, really important thing for us. And as Alex said, was it at Christmas, they ended up only giving just over £1,000. But it was kind of the security we had from that it went a long way to making sure that we kind of didn't drive ourselves too crazy during the big give week. And also people love being the top up. Since we've done that, it's just it's like another inside track for donors in the same way that them being part of the matched pod itself is. You know, they love being kept up to date, how things are going in the week. Yeah, it's really exciting. The only thing we don't have is we don't have a backup. For the backup, I'm not sure what would happen if the backup fell through when we need it, but you know, at a certain point, you've just got to be optimistic and hopeful, and that's what we're going with for that. I'll now lead you on to Alex, who's going to go through the things that do work for us.
Thanks, Barney. So we've spoken a lot about individual giving and a lot about major giving, but actually one of the biggest and most important pools for us in the Big Give is our mid-value supporters. And they really come through for us in the Big Give and the Big Give Green especially. But actually for our Christmas Big Give that we just did, we raised over £30,000 just from those giving between £500 and £2,500, which when you think about it is just incredible. And it is also a big opportunity for us to upgrade individual supporters to that mid-value level. I don't know if anyone's read it, but there was a recent report from the Centre of Social Justice called Supercharging Philanthropy. If you haven't read it, do, because it's really interesting. And they said that on average, donations are 2.5% higher when matched funding is used, which firstly just shows the importance of initiatives like the Big Give. But also, and kind of leading on from this, those donations between £500 and £5,000 are more responsive than smaller donations. And I think that really shows how much we need to kind of nurture those people giving like in the middle ground. And sometimes they can feel a little bit left out. But over the last few years, we have really, really spent time on our mid-value supporters and making Big Give Green a recognised part of their annual supporter journey. And the numbers speak for themselves. We can totally see the difference that it's made. And actually, some of those mid-value supporters have now become part of our pledge pot as well. You know, especially at the Christmas Big Give, but also Big Give Green, they can sometimes, you know, ask them to just pledge a little bit. And that brings them on board even more to be kind of part of the campaign. So connected to that, and kind of as I've mentioned before, we really concentrate on donor loyalty. Our major donors see the Big Give campaigns as part of their donation calendar, and they expect to hear from us around like kind of March, April time to support it. And knowing that we've built that loyalty really helps us when planning to grow our campaigns. You can also see it in individual giving. The same names pop up time and again because we've spent time and years creating a supporter journey that's really strong around this annual matched funding opportunity. And then finally, and Barney spoke about it, so might be repeating a little bit, but we're really careful with our reminders so that they really make an impact. As we said, we only send 2 during the campaign, but we make sure they're well placed. Sending too many reminders honestly puts people off, especially when they may well be receiving similar emails from other charities taking part in Big Give Green, because obviously that's where their kind of interest lies. And as Barney said, don't panic at the start and send a reminder too early, because it won't help. We usually send our first reminder on a Friday afternoon. And that's kind of for individuals and major and mid-value, everybody. We've got to give them time to kind of get in and maybe read their emails if they're busy during the week or whatever. But sending that one on the Friday afternoon means that people will look at it and then they'll donate over the weekend. And we honestly see such a big return on that reminder email. And then we'll send one this year. We'll send one on either the Monday afternoon or the Tuesday morning, depending on how nervous we're getting about the target. So yeah, that's a couple of things that work well for us, and I'd be really happy to discuss anything in more detail, obviously, as would Barney. And I think that is the end of our little presentation. And so now, yeah, any questions that anybody has? Thank you.
Thank you both. That was a really great presentation and a lot of great advice and sort of tips and insights for charities. So really thank you for joining us today and for the presentation. Yeah, I think we do have a couple of questions, and a reminder, if you do have any questions, put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. But we have a question, just out of interest, how big is your fundraising team?
Yeah, so we kind of split, as I said, into the ones, and we are quite well, I could say we're mid-sized team. So we're a mid-sized charity. We're not kind of a huge charity. So for major donors, we've got 4 people working on individuals, and then 2 people working on trusts and 2 people working on corporates. Trusts don't really get involved in the Big Give, though they can do. So I'm sure the Big Give team would be able to kind of help you if you wanted to get in trusts involved. We do get corporates involved sometimes, but it is that tricky one of like getting them to donate during the week can be tricky if they've got to get hold of a company credit card, or they've got to get things signed off by 3 different levels of people. Getting them to do it in time can be quite tricky. But yeah, that's the major donor, major giving side of things. Barney, you know the numbers for individual more than me.
Yeah, so sorry, just to clarify, so it's how big is our fundraising team for individual giving? Is that right? So we have about when individual giving here, we have about there's about 7 of us, but in terms of who works on the Big Give itself, it really is kind of one person kind of directing, kind of putting things together from the individual giving side. There's a bit of kind of working with our marketing teams or our engagement team to put kind of email copy together. But yeah, that's normally what we look for. Yeah, I think that kind of works for us nicely. We try not to spread it too big. I think there's a risk in organizations of our size where we're not kind of a huge charity, but we are quite large. I guess that's something we've got that's nice for us, but we try and keep the Big Give project as contained as we can, so it doesn't spiral too much behind layers of sign off, which can happen quite easily. Should I talk about the target if I do the next question, if we alternate questions? That sounds a good idea.
Yeah.
So that question from the anonymous attendee about how to judge the target to go for each year. That's a really good question, which is really tough. So I mean, I remember for one year for the Big Give Green, we'd raised £100,000, which was like the most we'd ever done. And then I was like, you know what? I think we're going to do 200,000 next year. And it was a finger in the air. It was I reckon we can do this if we try kind of thing. And we kind of made it happen because we knew that we had the potential to bring more people into supporting it. We knew we had more major donors who were interested more than ever because some had missed out from actually donating to Big Give Christmas. And a lot of it is thinking we have a relatively stable amount we can get from our individual giving audience, which is roughly for a team of our size about it depends. It can be between 25 and about 35 to 40,000 for each Big Give campaign. And then it's really looking at the major donors and kind of seeing, how much do we think we can get each major donor to give? And kind of really doing some maths where we're going, okay, well, we're 50% sure on this person, 90% sure on this person. This is a bit of a long ask. What do we think our mid-value supporters can do? Because we've seen, as Alex said, considerable growth there. So it is kind of really, it's a lot of maths beforehand, and it's quite scary. That is a hard job. That is kind of going through and doing a lot of kind of hoping, and we obviously rely on a lot of things going well for us. But yeah, that's really how we do it. A lot of maths. Our individual giving number tends to stay relatively the same. So a lot of our growth has come from major giving and that high value group.
Thanks, Barney. That's really helpful to know. We had another question here just around how you ask your staff to use the assets that you create. So, for example, email signatures or social media. And if so, do you know which channels perform best or gain the most traction and engagement?
Yeah, I don't mind answering that, and Barney can come in if he's got anything to add. So we definitely send around the e-signature beforehand. We obviously design it with our content and creative team, and we make sure that everyone's put it as their signature, as many people as possible. Obviously, some people won't, but that's fine. And then I think I spoke about our Slack channel that we post about afterwards, but we obviously also post on the day that we launch, and we will share all of the assets that we've got. So any social media posts that we've done, especially LinkedIn, and we ask people to like it and share it and share it with their friends. We also do that with our board as well. I think it's important to kind of mention them here. It hasn't worked so well for us at the moment. The board are kind of, I guess, because they're busy, and we send it to their Friends of the Earth work email, and maybe they don't check it or whatever. But I think it's really important with the social media assets to get as many people as possible to share them. In terms of like, what do we see the biggest return on? I think it's difficult to know, but they definitely like the kind of social media assets internally, because that's something they can share with their friends to show that they're doing. And I guess also kind of related to that, it's also asking especially our major and mid-value donors to also share those assets. So we say to them, like, please give and also share with your friends, and that networking as well, like our major donor networking, is really, really important. And it's one of the reasons why we chose LinkedIn to be the one that we did our organic social on, because a lot of our donors, we kind of follow us on LinkedIn, and it's their kind of work, their work way of reaching people. So they feel more comfortable sharing it on LinkedIn rather than maybe on their Twitter or Facebook, which might be more personal. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Barney.
Yeah, just on the corporate side, actually. So kind of we've had some corporates give in the past, and with kind of mixed success, some great success, but some we've struggled with a bit. The assets are also good as a secondary option to go up to corporates and ask them to do, if they would kind of mind, sharing it internally with their staff. If they can't donate for this campaign, would they spread our message? Would they let their social audiences know when the campaigns go live? That's definitely been a secondary ask that we've asked corporates as well.
And just to add to that, if you are really organised and have already accessed some of the marketing assets that we have provided charities from Big Give, and we've started using Trello now. So it's a great free resource. I think you can have up to like 5 or 6 boards for free. But this is a great option potentially to have a link with all of the assets included on that board. You can keep updating it and refreshing it as you get closer to the campaign. So it does mean that potentially you can just have one link that you share with all of the relevant people, whether that's internally or externally. And that can be a board you're continually updating with new assets and things. So potentially go and have a look at that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and actually that kind of goes on to the next question quite nicely. So from Marcel, I advise a tiny charity that don't have comms team and or social teams. So absolutely, the Big Give have themselves some amazing assets to use, and definitely make the most of that. Again, we're quite in a lucky position to have kind of the separate teams we have here. But the Big Give are great, and they will they've got assets that are ready to go, and definitely make the most of that, and so much guidance. And like webinars like this, I think they're so useful. We started, like, I remember when I did my first Big Give campaigns, again, I had a bit of luxury in that there was a lot of freedom because I was kind of putting together things myself, even inside this kind of large charity. And I think, yeah, just it's hard to do too much kind of wrong when you're kind of going out socially with things like this. So I think, yeah, make the most of the Big Give assets that are there, and yeah, also network. There's some really good kind of initiatives from the Big Give. There's the Facebook group, which is really useful. Kind of see what other people are doing, and yeah, making the most of your existing audience as well. We found so much of our existing audience love what the Big Give is about, and yeah, don't focus too much, I think, starting out on trying to spread and get new people in. I think see what you can do with what you've got so far.
I think
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
Go, Alex.
I was just saying also, like, you don't have to make everything you do fancy and kind of big and things. Like, I think I was saying, the storytelling and how you write your emails and the comms is like so important. People, it's great that we can have these assets and these pictures, but actually, if you write a really, really compelling narrative that brings your donor in and makes them want to give, then that's all you really need to do, right? So as a fundraiser, that's your bread and butter of what you do. So make sure that your email is as compelling and as storytelling as you can, and then if you haven't got the capacity or the resource to do the rest of it, then you've got the best toolkit that you need there anyway.
I think yeah, what Barney said is don't try and spread yourself too thin if you're a small team. Try and just focus on one or two social channels. Engage your volunteers. Also try and engage your supporters. Like, maybe there's supporters that actually want to help you, like maybe some of them work in marketing and would be willing to help you. So use your supporters and volunteers and just reach out to them. And yeah, I think also try and identify goals you want from the campaign, because it'll help narrow your focus of what you want to achieve. So obviously you want to hit your target, raise lots of money, but beyond that, what do you want to achieve? Like, do you want to grow your social media channels? But okay, identify which social media channels you want to grow on, and then you can focus on how you're going to do that. Or do you want to expand your email database? So if you narrow your goals for the campaign beyond just obviously the top line, it can help sort of you manage your resources and identify what you really need to do for the campaign.
Really good advice, all three of you. And I promise we didn't tell Barney to say that, but appreciate all of the nice comments, Barney. As we're on the topic of social, on paid social, who do you tend to target audience-wise, and do you test different audiences?
I'll comment on that because it's kind of individual giving. So paid social. Also, there was a question lower down about how much we spend as well, and what we expect to get back. So our spend is yeah, I feel like we're okay to say this, in terms of actual figures. But our spend, we've got ring fence for this Big Give Green is £1,500 for us, which is quite a lot. But we're kind of testing it to it'll be kind of targeted towards those interested in nature and environment specifically. We tend to, the imagery we kind of use actually for paid social is a little bit more targeted. Actually, we kind of create that separately from the other assets we create for the rest of the campaign for our paid social. And in terms of there's also a question around imagery that works best as well. It kind of aligns the same thing for us. I guess a lot of us in kind of the green sector, right? Animal imagery is so huge, and so any campaign where we can tie it to animals is it's a blessing, really, in terms of kind of driving engagement. And so kind of marketing kind of paid social towards those who are kind of interested in those kind of themes is really big. But yeah, imagery wise, it's hard because for big of the Christmas challenge, we tend to kind of make it more climate and energy themed in terms of what we kind of focus on. And that's more of a challenge, really. Whereas Big Give Green, we're more kind of nature and kind of environment. And so kind of leaning into nice images. Like I think the first time we tried this, we did an image of a hedgehog, and like that hedgehog, that was the hedgehog that meant we could double from 100,000 to 200,000 for our goal. Definitely, it was down to Henry the Hedgehog. And then we've kind of done otters for like a kind of water themed campaign. And this year, we're talking a lot about deforestation. So we've got some kind of orangutan images. And again, so that we find kind of good, and kind of tying things towards that really works and aligning for fundraising.
So, and just to follow on that, do you tie your campaign to specific Friends of the Earth activity, or is it more for your general work?
I did see that. Alex, do you want to come in on that one? I've talked
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah. So I guess it's kind of, well, actually, this year's quite different. This year we have focused on a very specific campaign. As Barney was saying, a kind of deforest. It's actually it's called Planet Over Profit. So we're asking the UK for a new law. So it seemed like a very specific ask, and something that donors could really kind of see a value in. Before we do kind of focus on an area of our work or a campaign, but we don't always drill down like into a really focused campaign. So for example, at Christmas we did our big climate plan, which is kind of an overarching campaign to get the government to write a good climate plan, but there's so many different areas of it that I guess we could have honed in on even more, but we decided to kind of keep it as the overarching campaign. So yeah, probably not like a particularly like straightforward answer, but I think it's best. It depends on how much work you're doing, I suppose. If you're a smaller charity, you might just want to focus on your charity as a whole and your overall goal. But because we've got kind of a lot of areas of different strands of our work, just doing a big campaign to raise money for all of it. Firstly, I don't think we could write about all of it in the character count for the for the application, but also I think it just helps to kind of write that story for our donors to focus in on one strand.
Great. And how do you use other fundraising contacts to share the campaign to their networks? I.e., do you approach corporates to share with their staff, etc.?
Yeah, so we definitely ask our corporates to share it on socials. Neither of us work like solely with corporates to answer that fully, but I'm not sure how well it's gone down before. Mostly because they've got their own messaging and they might have other partners, and so do they kind of have to share with other partners that they're working with as well. And obviously, as I said, we ask our major donors to share it with their major donors. I'm not sure we've ever asked our individuals to share it, but it could definitely, I think, be something that we try as well. But yeah, we do always just even throughout the year asking our networks to share our work, but definitely asking our corporates is a big part of what we do. What about individuals, Barney? Is there anything you do?
No, not really. It is kind of the straightforward fundraising ask with individuals. And yeah, I think with corporates it's hard because corporates, it's not, relationships with corporates, they're not like transactional. It's often kind of partnerships. And I think with the Big Give, it's a hard one because asking a corporate partner to share this campaign with their audience, what's the kind of proposition we're going to with them? I think that's been the difficult thing we've had, and something that we're working on, because I think it is a really good audience to try and hit if we can. But yeah, that's kind of been the struggle there, I think, for us is thinking how we do this in a way that isn't just being exploitative of our existing relationships. Yeah.
Sorry, Beth, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Happy to answer a question. We had a question here about how do you work to ensure that the Big Give fits into any global Earth Day campaigns from the global Friends of the Earth brand, especially if that campaign starts earlier or lasts longer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, I don't think I have an answer. Like, we obviously are kind of an international brand, and we do a lot of solidarity with others, with our international partners, our sister organizations. But we are a separate charity who do our own separate fundraising and our separate campaigns. So the honest answer is I don't think we do necessarily try and kind of fit in with a global Earth Day. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy to come in and just
Yeah.
reiterate. Yeah, exactly. I think we don't, and I think Earth Day is something that we celebrate, and we know it's around the Big Give Green, and we know it's a focus, and it's why the Big Give Green probably is where it is in the calendar. We don't do a lot with it. I mean, we're quite careful with it because with things like that, you don't want it to become like this commercialized thing, and then that kind of flies in the face a bit of our goals as a organization. So we don't tend to rely on it too much in our comms or anything like that. Apart from maybe I think we may have said in emails before, in reminders, it's Earth Day or we've just had Earth Day, that kind of thing. But it's more in passing.
And we got two questions about email, so I'll wrap them up into one. Is like, can you share any examples of your email headings and any insights into what works for those, and what have you learned from testing the different messages, such as email headings? Any tips on the wording?
I'm happy to come in on this because I brought up the emails in front of me actually to have a look. Alex might have done the same. We tend to find that what works well is kind of leading with things like double your donation and making that kind of a real kind of strong part of the heading. Those are the ones that tend to come through. Even kind of saying, double your donation at no extra cost. I think the challenge we've had with the Big Give with our existing audience is them thinking it's a scam. Quite honestly, we get a lot of people kind of saying, how does this work? This can't be real. I've had an email from Friends of the Earth saying I can double my donation. Is it real? And we have our team kind of prepped to answer those, kind of saying, yeah, it's real, and this is why. And we have this all there. But yeah, going out strong on that double the donation message is what really works for us, and tends to be what gets sent time after time, actually. Yeah. Have I answered both bits of that email question?
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah. And yeah, a question as well is, how do you suggest charities find major and mid-range donors if they've never done a Big Give campaign? I don't know if you have any advice there.
That's a question, isn't it? And one that we all struggle with, getting the new donors in. I would say go out to your existing networks. You might not think you've got any mid-value, especially the mid-value. You might not think you've got any in there, but you do. Like they are there. People can give £500 in your existing pool. I'm convinced of it. So definitely look through who you've already got. If there's anybody that's kind of standing out as giving, like, if they give to you at the moment like £100 or £200 or whatever, look into them, find out who they are, because they could be the people that you need to focus on. Again, if you've got a board or trustees, like, use them, ask them who their connections are, ask them if they can share it with their networks, because again, they probably will know somebody who can give at that mid-value or major donor level. Other than that, it is quite hard, and especially for Big Give. And what I would say is that it's very, very rare that we will get a major donation that's unsolicited out of the blue through the Big Give. Like, it's like the individual level or the mid-value level. The Big Give, the major donor ones are the people that we've cultivated over time from our own pool that we bring into the Big Give. So yeah, we don't kind of go out searching for major donors for the Big Give. We already have them, and we cultivate them and into giving the Big Give. But it is a really, really hard pool to find. So I would really focus on the mid-value level, and look in your existing pool for them. They are there.
And I think I mentioned this on a previous webinar actually, but I think it's really important for you to think about your donor stewardship plan and what's the plan post campaign. Because obviously, whilst the campaign week itself is important, it's also about how you continue to talk to those donors that you potentially get through the big give. We see, between 90 and 95% of charities receive at least one new donation from a new supporter having taken part in a match funding campaign with us. And we've heard stories from those charities that they started, donated a low level amount to us during our big give campaign and is now one of our major donors. But they wouldn't have known that unless they've taken them on that kind of journey of keeping them engaged with the charity. So ultimately, you never know who is making that initial, £50 donation to you, but it's really important to think about, making sure that you are keeping them engaged, adding them to your mailing list afterwards, and thinking about that kind of post-campaign plan as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on that really quickly, but yeah, absolutely. We've kind of said a lot, the loyalty people have for the big give campaigns and coming back each time, it's such a good way to, if you're wanting to cultivate those long-term major donor level kind of gifts, big give's such a good way to do that. Even reaching that mid value, we have so much success with that through the big give and getting people to that place. It's a really good platform for making that happen.
We have a couple of questions, so we're going to try and whiz through them, but I'll try and wrap these two questions up. Is that when you do individual giving and philanthropy, so this is their first ever big give campaign, so they have a pool of supporters, but they aren't used to fundraising messaging. Any additional advice on how to warm up supporters? And maybe you can follow on from that. Are you doing anything differently with your comms, because the campaign starts just after the Easter and bank holidays this year?
Yeah, I can handle that. So warming up the donors, I think that is explaining about the match funding and how important it is and how exciting it is for them. I go back to that report about it, 2.5% more likely if it's match funding for people to donate. They really do love that idea that their money is going further and meaning more. And I think especially if it's kind of the first time that you've done big give, or the first time a donor might have done big give, letting them know how that mechanism works. You can even get down to kind of the semantics of how it works. It really helps them to see like the value of it, and also making sure that you show the impact of that on your campaign and your kind of project that you're fundraising for, or your overall organization. Like if they just gave to you that £10 or £50, it would mean this could happen. But if they gave through the match funding, you'd get £100, and that means this could happen. And showing like your overall target, we're looking to raise, I think you said it was £10,000. So without the big give, you'd raise £5,000, which would mean you could do this. But oh my goodness, we're now going to be able to do this because you get your donation matched. And I think that's kind of the way to warm them up. Don't spend too much time, like lots of emails and things leading up to it. I don't think. We tend to send one beforehand, just telling them about the campaign and what the impact of it is, and how match funding is so important for it. And then we send one on launch day to our mid-value and major donors. But yeah, I hope that's helpful. And on the bank holiday thing, who decided to put Earth Day the day after Easter Monday? We are definitely going out to our mid-value and major donors earlier than we would normally, because we know that especially if they've got children, they'll probably be off on holiday the 2 weeks before the campaign, maybe even, which is why we're starting to send some of our emails next week, so that we've got that chance to get it in people's diaries before they close up shop and head off, because otherwise when they get back, it just might not be enough time. So definitely for mid-value and major donors, we are prepping them. We're doing it kind of more than we might would earlier than we might would normally. I don't know if you're doing anything different, Barney, and individual.
No, about the same. Yeah, about the same, really.
And any tips on using the campaign to reactivate lapsed donors?
I saw this one. I'm not sure if Alex wants to chip in as well. Generally, that doesn't quite work a lot of the time for us. It's not something we've looked into too much, but we tend to see if a donor hasn't given to the Big Give in a while, and they're like on our list where, you know, we've gone out to them. Yeah, it feels like it's not something we've succeeded at. So I'm not sure that's a good answer. For the lapsed donors, it might not be the thing that brings them back in. I'm not sure if you want to add anything, Alex.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think somehow it's kind of built into, I think, Bethany, you were talking about, like, you know, that supporter journey and keeping the supporters engaged and things, and they feel so excited because they've done it and they want to do it again and again and again. And I think if they're lapsed, then they've lost that excitement. I think also kind of following, we do send it out to a lot of our prospects as well. So we've got kind of a pool of prospects who we're trying to get on board, and we've used the Big Give to try and do that. And again, we don't get as many as we would have liked from that. So we think it's possibly not kind of, it is that one for our like core group of supporters who know us and know the Big Give and keep coming back to it, rather than possibly lapsed and not so engaged people.
And one final question to wrap up is, do you ask your supporters to run any in-person fundraising events, or is it all online?
So actually, a couple of years ago, we did, I did with a major donor, a couple of peer-to-peer events during Big Give Green. So we went to his house, he did 2 nights of it actually, which was amazing, but tiring. So the first night he had work colleagues, and the second night he had like neighbors, and they came, and we had some nature themed music, whatever that means, and I was there with an iPad and kind of had the Big Give Green page up ready, and people came and donated. We had 2 iPads, in fact, and it actually worked quite well. Over the 2 nights, we raised £5,000 from these donors. Not all of them gave to the Big Give Green because some of them had their checkbooks or whatever, but it was really nice to have that hook and be like, here's literally a campaign that you can support right now. You can just press this button and put in your details, and then you've given. And it was helpful for us, rather than saying, oh, we'll be in touch with you tomorrow about how you can donate. It was like, no, do it right now, and then you can go away and never speak to us again. So from a kind of major mid-value, that was really helpful. But I don't think it's not something we do a lot of. It's mostly other than that, online, I think.
Great. Thank you all joining us today. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. We're just over time, but I want to send a special thanks to Alex and Barney for joining us today and sharing their advice and tips with everyone today. It's been a really great presentation, a great webinar. I want to thank all of you attendees for joining us and asking us a load of questions. So yeah, if you have any other questions, please look at the support hub on our site, and if you can't find what you're looking for, email us at hello@biggive.org and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But we hope there's a lot of advice for you to take away for your own campaigns. Thank you all for joining us today, and hope you have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.